really didn't know what to call this video. I went with the terrible name Past and Future because I'd like to do two things here. First, I'll talk about films I saw during 2017, that's the past part. Then I'll talk about my video ideas for the channel, that's the future part. You know it's a bad title when you have to start the video off by explaining what the hell it means. And I was also going to do a segment in this video about the name of my channel, specifically about why I chose it. But I wanted to get this video up quickly, so I decided to put that out as a bonus clip in a few days or so. Well, it's time to look back at the films of 2017. I didn't actually get to see as many films this year as I normally do. It was a bit of a difficult year for me and I had a lot going on, but I thought I'd share my thoughts on the few I did see. Before I do that though, I'd like to mention 7 films I didn't see. I have to interrupt the video real quick. This is me from about 4 days after recording the script. Originally, I had a bit here where I mentioned that I missed seeing The Disaster Artist and that I planned to see it when it's online. Well, in light of the accusations against Franco, I no longer intend to see it or anything he directs in the future. His reaction to the allegations was to essentially call all the women liars, and he claims to support the Me Too movement but refuses to even entertain the idea of being reflective about his past actions and behaviors. I believe the women, and I think he's completely full of shit. And if you don't like my decision not to watch his movies due to the allegations, I encourage you to immediately stop watching this video, unsubscribe from my channel if you are subscribed, and then go away and don't come back. I'm not monetized on here, I don't need the viewership of sexual assault apologists, and I don't want it. I also missed seeing Wonder, and I plan to see it once it's available online. The Shape of Water is another one I haven't seen yet, since it hasn't come out here in New Zealand quite yet. It comes out here in a few days, and I will be seeing it on the day of its release. It was my most anticipated movie of 2017, and I was really gutted it didn't manage to come out in December. In this same category of films that have had their American release but haven't screened here yet is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I loved In Bruges, but I didn't really like 7 Psychopaths, so it'll be interesting to see this one. Another film that had a limited 2017 release in the US but a 2018 international release is The Post. It's out here now, but I haven't seen it yet, and given the positive critical reception and interesting subject matter, this is another one I'm guessing I'll enjoy. Due to their international release dates, I will be counting The Shape of Water, The Post, and 3 Billboards as 2018 films, and featuring them in whatever equivalent of this video that I put up in a year's time. Another film I didn't see was It. However, this was a conscious choice on my part. I'm sure it's a great film, just like everyone says, but I'm a really huge fan of the book. I've read it 3 times, despite its 1400-page length. I am deeply attached to that novel, and I've heard enough about this adaptation to know that it isn't faithful enough to the source material for my tastes. Regardless of how good it is on its own merits, I know myself, I'll just get really annoyed at everything it does differently from the book, and I won't be capable of fairly judging it as its own thing, so I skipped it. Though I am glad this film was made, not just because it will encourage people to read the novel, but also because we got this amazing clip of the Deadlights. And before anyone claims that faithful adaptations are an unrealistic expectation, check out the TV movie of King's novel Desperation, directed by Mick Garris. It's basically word for word exactly like the book. Sadly, I wasn't a big fan of that novel. It's okay, but the parallel universe version, The Regulators, was better. Another one I chose not to see despite hearing good things is American Made. One of my research passions is organized crime, and I've studied the true events depicted in this film. I get really annoyed when crime dramas based on real things veer heavily away from what really happened, and this film does that, so I figure it will annoy me a lot. And having Tom Cruise in the lead role, while that made sense for Doug Liman to do in Edge of Tomorrow, I think it was a poor choice for this kind of movie. So those are films that I decided not to watch despite thinking they are probably good. There are many films I decided not to see as a prediction of their quality being low, though. For example, Justice League, Transformers 5, The Mummy, and Power Rangers. Okay, that out of the way, I'll proceed with my rundown. Because I want to get this video out quickly, and therefore don't want it to be too long, I've decided to limit my take on each film to just 2 sentences, with one exception made for my favourite film of the year, which gets 3. What a privilege for it! An extra sentence on a channel almost nobody knows exists. My take on the film Get Out contains a huge spoiler for it, and if you haven't seen that film, then before watching this video, go and watch it immediately because it's awesome. The films aren't listed in any particular order. Let's get started. Denis Villeneuve was a fantastic choice to direct the Blade Runner sequel, and he's still on top form here. There's a lot of thematic similarities with Battlestar Galactica and Her, and the production design was absolutely wonderful. I often wonder if Jordan Peele's core idea for this truly brilliant debut film was, how can I get white people to cheer while watching a black man brutally murder a white family? Well, question answered. Even more brilliantly imaginative, visually astounding, and wonderfully endearing than the first one. It's pretty strange that a series of children's films about a cartoon bear represent the absolute cutting edge of modern filmmaking creativity, but they really do.
Lovely surprise! Didn't expect you home so early.
This was my favourite film of 2017. It's just so bold, inventive, and aesthetically pleasing. There's some interesting ideas here, but unfortunately it smacks of directorial inexperience. The best thing in the film was Lauren Holly's haunted and tragic monologue about the girl in the supermarket. My alternate title for this film is People Being Dumb Too. Ridley Scott fucks up the suspension of disbelief. At least it's better than The Counselor, I guess. I loved this so much that it was my favourite film of the year until late December when I saw Paddington 2. I'm so glad they finally put out a good Wolverine solo film, even though I'm not a huge fan of the character. When I got home from seeing this, I watched an episode of British sitcom Man Down and was far more emotionally affected by that than I was by this. And I think that's all I really need to say on that. The entire plot hinges on a self-respecting Scottish person willingly drinking American whiskey. Suspension of disbelief demolished. In case you were wondering what Drive would have been like if made in a completely different tone and style, now you know. I liked it, but I felt it wasn't quite up to Edgar Wright's usual standard. Solid movie. I just realized after watching this for the third time that Tom Holland is the same kid from The Impossible. Huh. Finally, we have proof that New Zealand directors aren't all shit at making superhero films. Yes, I'm looking at you, Martin Campbell. I was really enjoying it until the third act, when my suspension of disbelief was utterly destroyed by one particular scene. What a shame. It's nice that the DCEU finally has a good film in it, and it's great to see Patty Jenkins working on the big screen again. Huh, I didn't realize Harry Gregson Williams had a brother who was in the same line of work. A braver, bolder film than the first one. Glad to see their portrayal of the villain was really good this time, as opposed to complete shit. Pretty much the first movie again, in a really good way. Dane DeHaan was extremely miscast here. It was cool to see this iconic comic that was previously thought to be unadaptable for technological reasons has been adapted. Great film. I'm glad Soderbergh didn't retire, even though Behind the Candelabra would have been a fantastic film to go out on. Though it is a flawed movie, I liked this a lot more than I thought I was going to. Really cool design for the alien. I didn't particularly enjoy this, but I'm glad it was made, as it was very moving to see Dunkirk veterans sharing their experiences and thoughts on the film. Always nice to see the amazing work of the very talented Hoyt van Hoytema. Now it's time to go through my ideas for future videos. Again, these are in no particular order beyond separating the full videos and the minisodes. Here I talk about Eisenstein's ideas about the fundamental nature of what filmmaking is, and how that influenced David Mamet, whose book On Directing Film is the best book by a film director that I've read, and I've read quite a few. That Batgirl standee isn't normally there, by the way. Neither is the light stand, for that matter. This one is about how Citizen Kane revolutionized the technical side of filmmaking, and how Terminator 2 revolutionized the technological aspect of filmmaking, and I'll define precisely what those terms mean in the context of the film industry. Here I will compare the comic book Alias with its screen adaptation Season 1 of Jessica Jones. Here I will compare the comic book Guardians of the Galaxy with the two films. This one needs another film before I make it. It's about remakes that are clearly superior to the original film. I have to settle on which film I want to include alongside Soderbergh's Ocean's 11, and I have a few different potential choices. This is one of only 2 videos I have on this list that is purely negative towards its subject matter. As I said in my channel trailers, I want this channel to be about things I love rather than things I hate. Having said that, I'm making an exception here because I haven't seen anyone on YouTube discussing some of the specific problems with Alien Covenant that I want to talk about. This one will be about my love-hate relationship with Marvel Studios, how the MCU has instituted practices that I find deeply concerning as a director, but also how these practices have yielded such good results, which is actually part of why I find them so troubling. Here I will be talking about what some of my film colleagues and I called the Holy Grail, marrying the 2 polar opposite approaches to film direction of Steven Spielberg and Stanley Kubrick. There have been 2 films that have come close to doing this, but they both failed, and I will discuss why. Here I analyse the work of Argentine film director Gaspar Noé, who makes films with god-awful exploitation-based subject matter, while using really awesome and innovative filmmaking techniques to make them. This one is me talking about my approach to being an autodidact, which I feel is very relevant to this channel because research is such a hugely important part of being a fiction writer in any medium. I'll probably do this one fairly soon. My magnum opus. I've predicted that this video will be feature length, which technically just means over an hour, but when I'm using that term here I'm meaning more like 90 minutes or so. I don't want to say anything about it because there's almost nothing I can say without huge spoilers for the show, and it's my favourite show ever.
You know, everyone I know is fighting to get back what they had. I'm fighting because I don't know how to do anything else.
I've noticed that there isn't much discussion outside of poetry circles about the various meters used in poetry. Most people have heard of iambic pentameter, but that's about it. Well, there are a ton of really interesting meters and verse forms aside from iambic pentameter, and this video will be a celebration of them. This one will probably be my next full-length video. In it, I propose a series of ideas that would have made the DCEU both more different to the MCU and more similar, in ways that would have made it actually work as a franchise. I really enjoy studying art history, and I also feel that abstract art is deeply misunderstood in popular culture. So here I will try to do my very small part in changing that. This one will have some ties to the autodidacticism video, and so will probably come out sometime after that one. This is the only video game-based entry on this list. I like video games, but there are already so many people doing such great critical analysis of them on YouTube that I don't feel like I have much to contribute. In it, I will make the case that the 2010s is the height of 2D platforming, and how this has nothing to do with technology being better than when the genre was at the height of its popularity. Instead, it's due to really talented and creative devs who were inspired by that previous generation of 2D side-scrollers. Here I analyse the comic series The Invisibles in all its surreal, weird glory. It's one of my all-time favourite comics, and it's a crime how little content there is out there talking about how great it is. I might do a similar video about Animal Man sometime after this as well. Swamp Thing is a DC comic, and Man-Thing is a Marvel comic, and they have a history of borrowing ideas from each other in ways that have made both better. It's an interesting case of back and forth influencing, and I love Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing and Steve Gerber's run on Man-Thing. Here I fanboy about my favourite artist, neoclassical painter David, and I talk about how he depicted so much important French history that was happening around him, as he lived through perhaps the most tumultuous time in the history of France. Here I take a look at the career of renowned Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, one of the foremost masters of the craft, whose influence on future directors is towering. And I'll probably overstate how much the Western genre borrows from his work, since I have been known to claim that the entire genre is basically just samurai movies in a different time and place. Here I explain some of the basics of filmmaking that are taught to students at film school, like the 30-degree rule, crossing the line, basic 3-point lighting setups, cross-contamination, how to line and break down scripts, how to make call sheets, and I'll go through the various departments on a film set, what they do, and what the key roles are in each. And also I'd like to talk a bit about my experience of going to film school and share my thoughts on the pros and cons of that approach to starting a career in the film industry versus just getting gopher jobs on film sets and training on the job, which is an approach that a lot of people do take. This is focused on the novel, not the film. Dune is my favourite novel, and I hate Lynch's film adaptation with a passion. Some of the changes he made from the source material make no sense. Jodorowsky's proposed version would have also been a huge departure from the novel as well, but it seems from the documentary that his changes would have been a lot more interesting. Having said that, I'm not disappointed that he never got to make it. I'm more positive towards the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, but that too isn't what I'd call a good adaptation. To be honest, I'm pretty sure that it might be impossible to do an adaptation that lives up to how amazing the book is, due to the sheer amount of world building that would require combined with the short duration of films, and even of miniseries. And I kind of wish none of the adaptations existed. That's why I'm not sad that Jodorowsky's version was never realized. This will be about two very different, but both equally valid, approaches to directing a debut feature film. Dog Soldiers representing the conventional wisdom done very right, and The Gift representing an intimidatingly ambitious undertaking that was successfully pulled off, somehow. And I'm being facetious there, I know how it was pulled off. If I didn't, I wouldn't be including it in the video. The Silmarillion is one of my favourite books, and I by far prefer it to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Here I will talk about how The Silmarillion is essentially a historical work, but of a fictional universe. And as someone who studied history at university while taking a few years off from the film industry, that really appeals to me. Here I will bring up some additional points, corrections, or clarifications I thought of after finishing some of my videos. I put this between the full episodes and the minisodes because how long it is will depend on when I do it, in terms of how many previous videos I will be talking about in it. Errol Morris is the greatest documentary filmmaker who ever lived, and his work is really underappreciated. The reason this will be a minisode is because there's not too much to actually say about him and his body of work beyond, go and watch it. All of it. Now. I'm not sure if I will actually make this one, because doing so would require buying at least one version of the DVD or Blu-ray and possibly several, trying to find the specific one I'm looking for. Basically, I rented a copy of some special edition version of the DVD for Batman Begins back when it came out, and there was a fascinating special feature on it about the uses of visual effects in the film. And I noticed after watching that subsequent films started doing similar things to it, to the point where nowadays pretty much every film that has visual effects is doing the same kind of stuff. This will be my next video, so I'm not going to say anything about it here. You're not going to have to wait long to see it, so there's no point in teasing it now. This one I will probably put off for a long time, since it will likely be the most contentious video I make on this channel. I think I can make a good case for my opinion on this matter, but it will take me a while to figure out how to best codify that argument in video form. This is the one I mentioned in my video about Spider-Man Homecoming that I might possibly do. If I do make it, it will probably be sooner rather than later. The title kinda says it all here. Fury Road has a really wonderful and subtle approach to world building, and I want to celebrate and discuss that. Here I will analyze the last scene of Magnolia, my favourite film, and in particular the last few seconds of the last scene. This will be about the very memorable character Don Logan in Jonathan Glazer's crime drama masterpiece Sexy Beast. Here I will discuss the film Casino's realistic approach to depicting specific aspects of Italian-American organized crime. It's completely unique in this regard as far as I'm aware. The movie Donnie Brasco also strives for realism, but in a different and more general kind of way than Casino. The film Assassins is one of those really fantastic pieces of work that for some reason almost nobody knows about. Even some film buffs who like the work of the director Mateo Kassovitz. The main potential barrier to making it is if I can even get a hold of a copy of it. Here I will talk about the most basic and fundamental aspect of the job of film direction, that being maintaining the audience's suspension of disbelief, outside of meta-narratives of course, where messing with the suspension of disbelief is the point. This video will be an elaboration on one of the topics I brought up in my video Martian Gravity, and in it I will be kind of taking the opposite position than I did there, sort of. I'm not sure how well known it is that Disney completely butchered their adaptation of The Little Mermaid. Basically, their version teaches the exact opposite lesson of the fairy tale, and it was very irresponsible the way they changed it. That's not all the video ideas I have, but I decided I just wanted to get the video up, so rather than me going through all of them one by one and providing a brief description, or in the case of the Dune one, just ranting about how much I dislike the adaptations for some reason, I thought for this last bunch I'd instead just put up the titles on the screen all in a row. So here's that. Alright, well that's all for today. I hope I piqued the interest of some of my new subscribers. That reminds me, I should thank Harry for that shout out.
Thanks.
And especially for the way he did it. Making people work for it is a good way to filter out the internet Nazis. Remember the good old days, when you could assume the phrase internet Nazis was either hyperbole or someone talking about grammar? Have a wonderful day, everyone.